They tell you the system's rigged. They say you need deep pockets and insider connections to do affordable housing. But you know what? And they want you to believe it's impossible. But we're not playing that game. We're going to make our own path. We're going to find our own land. And we're going to build communities and revitalize communities that we know are important to us. So today I want to give you 3 tools, overlooked resources that are kind of in your toolkit, that can be in your toolkit as an emerging small scale micro developer, whatever term you want to put on it, whatever the cool term is for the day. You know, the potential, I want to talk about the potential in land banks, forgotten government properties, and even some land, family land or land of somebody that you know, your church, right? Land that's already in hand. And let's take back that narrative and let's build communities from the ground up. Let's get to work. So if you don't know me, Dominique Anderson Consulting, passion pusher for the everyman to become a developer for affordable or mission-driven housing and community development. And really excited to do this work and want to create. I'm on a mission to create as many, affordable housing developers that understand, have a passion for building great developments in their community. All right, so let's get to work. So, we're bypassing the traditional roadblocks of, what's out there, how do we get it, I don't have enough money, I gotta go to the bank. Let's get past that and let's go to these 3 sources. So for affordable housing, we have 3 key sources. How do you navigate this world of government properties and all of these things? There's a 1,000 different programs out here and thoughts, right? But let's get right to it. So first up, let's talk about land banks. These are often public or quasi-public entities. They take in land that's in a city and they hold it, right? It can be vacant, it can be abandoned, or it can have tax problems, right? Tax delinquent properties. And the land bank takes it and holds onto this land and says, we want to use this in this city, in this community, in this area for good, right? So they're holding on to land for a good reason. And, they really have designed, most land banks really want you to build affordable housing or now is the conversation, right? Like, how do we take this land and build affordable housing? How do we put it in the hands of people who are going to create long-term affordability? So not just that you create this land or you take this land and make it, affordable housing today, and then in 10 years it's, expensive. What's the long plan? And so that's what they think about with this land. The beauty of land banks, if done well, is that there are opportunities for connections with new developers like yourself, right? Or you're thinking about being a new developer. There's opportunities for you to go out there and get that land and do the good work. There's opportunities to make partnerships with other funding sources to access more opportunity, right? So how do you find these land banks? You're going to search for them in your city. So let's, for example, Houston. I happen to be close to Houston today. So if you have the Houston Land Bank, search that and then see what they have to offer. And you really have to read. How do you get the land? How much does it cost? What do you have to do with it? How long do you have to do that with it? Right? So, for example, Dallas has a land bank and they have 3 different levels that you can buy land at. So you can buy land at 11,000, like 17, and then 25,000, right? But it depends on what type of housing you're building for the type of earner, right? The area median income. So if that person earns 30% of the income in their area, okay, then you can buy that piece of land for, $11,000 and then realize a project on it. They're also going to tell you how long you have to build that. So you can't just hold this land. You can't buy it and hold it, because that's been part of our issue. People bought all this land for the low, and then they held on to it and did nothing with it. And then they wound up reselling it to somebody who was just going to come in and build expensive houses or apartments or something on it. So, they want people to get this land and do the good work and then create long-term affordability. And so, they are going to give a lot of affordable housing developers preference. And the other good thing about this and about the land banks is as they stand up these projects and they really are looking for, how do I get in touch? They are putting out RFPs and, requests for proposals and requests for projects, and they want to know who's out here doing this work, who wants to do this work. So they're creating databases of individuals just like yourself. So that gives you an opportunity to what? Connect with other people just like you. That gives you the opportunity to meet other people who may be doing this work. And you remember that iron sharpens iron, right? And so if you're working together, it really helps you out. And so, look at your city and county websites. They're a resource. So that's for land banks. But then there's also a whole other area called real estate services, right? So I honestly didn't know that Tennessee, for example, had a real estate services division. I've known this now for a good number of years, but when I found out, I was like, wait, what? What does that mean? There are whole buildings, there's land that, your city or county government owns, and they have to operationalize that some way, right? They need to do something with that. So it may look like, if you Google this or search it, it may look like real estate services, it may look like economic development, it may look like surplus property. There's a whole building in Austin, Texas, where they have just like desk and all kinds of things that you can just go get for next to nothing. And this is just a surplus warehouse. And I feel like most cities have, or a lot of cities have something like this, right? Schools, your school board's going to have a lot of leftover things that you can go get, right? So it's even land. It's not just, desk and buildings, but it's also land and buildings, right? So you can, figure out, this is how I can use this land to do affordable housing. But what are they always going to want? What's the plan? What's the purpose and what's the plan? Because without that, you don't have any focus, and they're not just going to give you land to hang out and figure it out. You need to have a purpose and a plan first, right? And so real estate services, economic development, surplus property. Check the websites of your local school districts as well. Be persistent. Be persistent, and don't be afraid to make inquiries. Like, don't be afraid to ask them, hey, I see that you have this. What are you going to do with it? In Memphis, there was a organization that got a building for $1 because they had a plan and they knew how they were going to operationalize that building to be a community gathering space, provide support services and other services for the community out of that building. And then they had a development plan, like, how are we going to rehab this building? How are we going to fix it up? And then they did a capital campaign, right? So all these things sound like huge pieces. What's the first small bite? Let me Google these places. Let me find the land. Let me find the building. Let me talk to the people. And guess what? Inevitably, you're going to email somebody and they're not going to email you right back. So keep going. Or find who's a contact that may have an in. Somebody on the school board? Call them and say, hey, I'm trying to get to this building. Maybe you'll have a better response if they call over you. Sad but true, right? It's unfortunate, but it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? And so, we've hit the land bank, we've hit surplus, we've hit the school board. And then, one of your last places may be family members. I can't tell you, I did a keynote recently, a keynote speech to a group, and a lot of the women afterwards came up and they said, wait, we have land. My family owns this piece of land in Louisiana or Arkansas or Mississippi, and I was thinking about doing development, but I didn't know where to start. Perfect. That's perfect. Or if you're an usher or a deacon at a church or a religious institution and they own land and they want to do the good work but don't know where to start, they don't have a developer on their team or they don't trust all developers, great, you be that person. Start there. That's perfect. Because what we need is land. They're not making any more of that. So that's the key. So talk to your family members. Look at things like if there's community land trust or co-ownership agreements. How do you put something like that together? Maybe you talk to a developer with more experience than you and you create a partnership agreement. How do you all partner together to do this work? And so that's important, right? It's not easy with family, and it's not always the quickest, because people mean well until money shows up, and then they have a whole lot of opinions and a whole lot of questions. But work through that together, or look at the public land. So I've put some resources in the comments below, and of course, where can you always join me? On Skool, SKOOL, to our From Neighbor to Developer community. I drop a lot of these gems in there all the time, but I really want you all to think about today. Take today. Let today be your day of action. Let me go look at these 3 sources. Land banks, the government near me, my local government, municipality. What do they own? How can I do that? How can I get that? And then, we'll talk about feasibility. There's another video I think I've put out for feasibility. And how do you do a feasibility study to see if it's even worth your time or your money? And then there's a lot of pre-development. How do you know? Okay, if it's worth my time and money, now where do I get money to do some of this work? Well, that's pre-development capital. We'll talk about that too. No problem. Or we may have already talked about that too, right? So depending on when you're watching this. What's most important is right now you have opportunity to look at 3 sources for land. So let's remove that barrier. Let's remove the I can't afford land. I can't. First of all, quit canting all over yourself, okay? Because you can. But these are the pieces that I want you to think through. These are things I want you to work through. What else can we do? Well, besides going to Skool, also like, share, subscribe this video. I'm supposed to tell you all to subscribe to my video all the time. But if you haven't done that, because there's always resources that are here, call me, ping me, DM me. Let's talk about it. I do one-to-one coaching. I do one-to-one courses. And also am preparing to offer a 1-day VIP course. So let's take the day. Let's take the day and just flesh it all out, right? It's $1,000 master course, and I want to take an 8-hour block. Let's build this thing out together, right? DM me, let's talk about it. If nothing else, have an amazing day, and if you can't, don't make it worse for anybody else. I didn't steal that from Tabitha Brown. I just feel that way. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.